What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com. Here are my DFS picks for NBA Tuesday, January 17th. These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our new videos. In this video, I'm going to go over my top picks for today's NBA slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, let's take a look at this 4-game NBA slate. So at the point guard position, stud on the slate that I like is Damian Lillard from the Portland Trailblazers playing the Denver Nuggets, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They give up the third most fantasy points to opposing point guards. Damian Lillard has averaged 47.4 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 36 minutes per game with a 33% usage rate. He's projected at 45.9 fantasy points here tonight. I think he can score 50 fantasy points or more and get you over 5 times value. He's 9,500 DraftKings salary, 400 more on FanDuel, and Vegas thinks there's going to be 234.5 points scored in this game. Damian Lillard has scored 56, 60, and 61 fantasy points in the last 3 games. He played 36, 29, and 40 minutes in those games. And he also scored 57, 73, and 54 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the Nuggets. So only 1 game out of his last 5 games that he scored under 50 fantasy points, and he has a good track record here versus the Nuggets. It's a good matchup, a good price tag in a high-scoring game. So I like Damian Lillard here versus the Denver Nuggets. Okay, now here's a value play at the point guard position, also eligible at the shooting guard position. I like Seth Curry from the Brooklyn Nets playing the San Antonio Spurs, who have the second worst defense overall, give up the 10th most fantasy points to opposing point guards. Seth Curry has averaged 17.4 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 22 minutes per game with a 19% usage rate. Now he's projected at 17.6 fantasy points here tonight, but I think he can score 25 fantasy points or more in this matchup, get you well over 5 times value. He's only 4,300 DraftKings salary, 600 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 234 points scored in this game, and Seth Curry has scored 30, 12, and 22 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 26, 25, and 24 minutes. Now, I like this pick because in his last 4 games versus the Spurs, Seth Curry scored 27, 43, 36, and 34 fantasy points. So, in the last 5 games, he scored under 20 fantasy points twice, and 3 out of the last 5 didn't score under 22, so obviously some risk here with Seth Curry. But I like the matchup. I like the player versus team history. I don't think his ownership's going to be very high as well in a high-scoring game. So I think it's a good value play. You can take the risk on Seth Curry here versus the San Antonio Spurs. Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching. If you want to enter the drawing for $25 PayPal, all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won. And then we'll send you $25 PayPal. So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you. Okay, let's take a look at the shooting guard position. So I like Josh Richardson from the San Antonio Spurs playing the Brooklyn Nets, who have a good defense overall, and they've been good versus opposing shooting guards. But Josh Richardson has averaged 21.6 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 23 minutes per game with a 21% usage rate. He's projected at 19.8 fantasy points here tonight, but I think he can score 25 fantasy points or more and get you over 5 times value. He's $4,500 DraftKings salary, $1,300 more on FanDuel, so I love that DraftKings price. We know Vegas thinks there's going to be 234 points scored in this game. So Josh Richardson has scored 32, 25, and 25 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 30, 21, and 22 minutes. He also scored 34 and 34 fantasy points in the 2 games before that. So out of his last 5 games, has not scored under 25 fantasy points. So he's been hot. So I like Josh Richardson here versus the Brooklyn Nets. Okay, let's take a look at the small forward position. So at the small forward position, I like Tobias Harris from the Philadelphia 76ers, playing the LA Clippers, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They've been pretty good versus opposing small forwards. And Tobias Harris has averaged 31.8 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 34 minutes per game with a 20% usage rate. He's projected at 30.2 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5 times value. He's $6,100 DraftKings salary, $200 more on FanDuel, and Tobias Harris has scored 30 and 21 fantasy points in his last 2 games, playing 31 and 32 minutes. And in his last 4 games versus the Clippers, he scored 26, 21, 43, and 45 fantasy points. So I like Tobias Harris here versus the LA Clippers. Now, if you don't like Tobias Harris, you could also play Norman Powell from the LA Clippers, playing the Philadelphia 76ers, who have a good defense overall, been good versus opposing small forwards. Norman Powell has averaged 24.4 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 25 minutes per game with a 26% usage rate. He's projected at 26.2 fantasy points here tonight. I think he can score 30 fantasy points or more, get you 5 times value or more. He's $6,000 DraftKings salary, same price on FanDuel. And Norman Powell has scored 30, 34, and 37 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 27, 28, and 30 minutes. So I like Norman Powell here versus the Philadelphia 76ers.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all of our DFS tools for all sports. You can try the Position Optimizer, where you can see the top players ranked for each position. And we added a new Player Trends tool, where you can see the top salary differences between FanDuel and DraftKings. It's a really good tool to help you pick out value for the site that you're playing on. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Okay, let's take a look at the power forward position. So he did sit out last game with a back injury, but he is going to be good to go here tonight. It was not serious. So I like Ben Simmons from the Brooklyn Nets, playing the San Antonio Spurs, who have the 2nd worst defense overall, give up the 4th most fantasy points to opposing power forwards. Ben Simmons has averaged 28.2 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 27 minutes per game with a 14% usage rate. He's projected at 26.5 fantasy points here tonight. I think he can score 30 fantasy points or more in this one. It's a good matchup and get you 5 times value or more. He's $5,900 DraftKings salary, $1,000 more on FanDuel. We know Vegas thinks there's going to be 234 points scored in this game. I think this is going to be a good game to stack. And Ben Simmons has scored 36 and 24 fantasy points in his last 2 games, playing 26 and 29 minutes. And he scored 31, 24, and 33 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the Spurs. So I like Ben Simmons here versus the San Antonio Spurs. Okay, moving on to the center position. So 2 studs on the slate here. You got Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid. But out of those 2 guys, I like Joel Embiid from the Philadelphia 76ers playing the LA Clippers, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, give up the 9th most fantasy points to opposing centers, and Joel Embiid has averaged 57.3 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 35 minutes per game with a 38% usage rate, and he's projected at 51.6 fantasy points here tonight. I think he can score 60 fantasy points or more, get you 5 times value or more. He's $11,300 DraftKings salary, $300 more on FanDuel. Joel Embiid has scored 61, 46, and 48 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 35, 35, and 27 minutes. And Joel Embiid has scored 63, 50, 68, and 58 fantasy points in his last 4 games versus the Clippers. So he would have hit value 3 out of the last 4 games, and has played well in all 4. Good matchup here, and I like the $700 savings that you're going to get over Nikola Jokic. If you got the money, go ahead and roll with Jokic, but I like Joel Embiid here versus the LA Clippers.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smiggity smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.